What is the meaning of life? Why am I here? Those are questions that all humanity has asked for the ages. In 1977, George Foreman, the heavyweight boxer, was about to take on Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico for the title. A few days before, George stood at his hotel room balcony and he says this, quote, "I was empty. For 10 years, I had gone through the same routines, getting ready for fights. And in the end, another win. But for what? My goal for life is another W?" He thought, is that all there is? He goes on to say, "Money didn't fill the void. I had more cash in the bank than most could dream of. 3 homes, a dozen cars, and a ranch. Yet with all that stuff, I was still unfulfilled. Would another car make me happy? One more house? Some mysterious piece of puzzle was missing, but I didn't know where to find it. More than once, I toyed with the idea of driving my car over a cliff." George Foreman ended up losing the fight with Jimmy Young, but a greater fight was going on inside of him, and eventually he surrendered his heart to Jesus Christ and found peace with God. He went on to actually become a pastor. Punching pastors. I like those. But then here's that reality, is that God has given us purpose and meaning in life, and it's found in His Word. Life is found in a relationship with God. And Ecclesiastes becomes this book, one of those books that tells us about this journey in a sense of discovering how empty life is apart from God and coming to that place of surrender and realization that He's the one that brings meaning and purpose to my life. So I'm going to give you a little background and breakdown of this book, and then we'll dive into chapter 1. Ecclesiastes, a tough word. It's a Greek word, actually. It comes from the word ecclesia, meaning assembly. In the New Testament, it's used for the church, the ecclesia, the assembly. And it says there in verse 1, it's the words of the preacher or the teacher. This is one who is in the assembly, one who is over that, maybe giving this classroom, this Life 101 class that you just signed up for when you walked through the doors. And it tells us there that the son of David, the king in Jerusalem. So this is more likely Solomon, King Solomon, the direct son of David, who was king of Jerusalem, written about 935 BC. But this book is about perspectives. It's like looking at life through these natural eyes of, you might say, an unsaved man, looking at how life operates, seeing all the vain and emptiness of life, the struggles in it, the hopeless realities. I mean, we can't change time. We can't change death. You know, there are certain things that are just going to happen, and we have no ability to control it. Even the best of man's achievements, he's going to say, are worth nothing in the long run. Kind of depressing, but it's real. And the teacher examines life from this perspective and is seeking happiness from all the things of the world. Exactly what we all do. And so he goes out and he tries scientific discovery, and he tries wisdom and philosophy, and he tries partying and alcohol and architecture, designs and property and luxury and all these things, materialism, moral codes. And at the end, he just is like, it's all vain. It's all empty. And ultimately, the teacher comes to a place where instead of looking out at the world for satisfaction or looking into himself to try to find satisfaction, he looks up to the Lord, the creator of all, to find purpose and meaning in life. William Barclay, that great preacher, once said this: there are 2 great days in a person's life: the day we are born and the day we discover why. So the obvious question for you and I is, have we discovered why? The Bible tells us God brings meaning and purpose to our life. We know that comes through the relationship through Jesus Christ. It's not stuff, it's not people or experiences, it's that relationship with the Lord. You see, the world is going to tell you and I, you are made up of 2 things: body and soul. You are made up of these fleshly drives and desires and these emotional things of decisions. That's all you are, is an elevated animal life. That's what the world will tell you. But God comes along and says, listen, you're not just made of a body and soul. You have a spirit that can commune with me. And when God makes alive that spirit, now it understands the meaning and purpose of life. And the body, soul, and spirit all come into this one place in agreement. God, I was made for you. I was made to have a relationship with you, to glorify you through this body that you've given me, and in my emotions, and through my will, and with my heart. Lord, I was made for that. But that's not what the world will tell you. The world will say, keep trying, keep striving. And so, well, if that didn't work out, maybe you need a new relationship. Well, if this didn't work out, maybe you need a new thing. If that didn't work out, it's trying to find life in all the temporary things. And we come to this realization, somebody once said that God made you and I with this God-shaped hole inside of us that only He can fill. In fact, in Ecclesiastes, he says in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 11, that God put eternity in your heart. From the very moment of creation, men has worshipped something. He's made you a spiritual person to worship something. And so people turn to the moon and the sun and creation itself, and we turn back to the Creator who made us to worship Him. He put that in your heart, eternity. And that's found in that relationship with Christ. And Ecclesiastes really is a book to read kind of the end of it first. You ever have, how many of you guys are those type of people that you go, hey, book's too long, let's just go to the last chapter and read it? Okay. You know, or maybe you watch a TV series and you're like, man, this is like 10 seasons long. Let's just get to the last one and see how it all ends. And maybe you work backwards from that. Some people are like that, like Marlon. But, you know, you raised your hand, buddy. You threw yourself out there. You know, some people like the progress and the mystery of it all. And some people are like, you know what, just get to the end. Let's see what happens. Oh, he died. Okay, it's over. You know, the butcher did it type thing. You're done. But look at Ecclesiastes chapter 12. If you don't want to hear the end, then plug your ears. You can wait a few weeks till we get there. Ecclesiastes 12, his final conclusion in the whole matter of everything he studied and discovered, he says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Now, what's interesting is we live in a world, right, that says, hey, question everything. Question everything. And so they'll say, well, what right do you have to tell me this? What right do you have to make such a bold statement about life? Why should I trust your opinion and viewpoint? That's your story. Mine would be different, old timer. You don't have anything to tell me because I can do what I want. But when we consider the source of this book, where it comes from, a guy who knew quite a bit, who had quite a bit, a unique person in light of history, it's wise for us to learn from him. In fact, this is what 1 Kings 4 tells us about Solomon. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan the Ezrahite. Not sure who he is, but he's a wise guy. Wiser than Herman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. How do you remember all those? I don't know. He spoke about plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also spoke about animals and birds and reptiles and fish. From all nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. I mean, this guy has got more money than Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos combined. I mean, he's got more clout and power. He's a botanist, he's a zoologist, he's a scientist, he's a philosopher. I mean, on and on and on his resume goes, and very unique. And yet, Solomon, in all of his successful ventures, he made some mega mistakes. Those of you that have studied him as a king. God had once told the children of Israel, I don't want you to amass a lot of gold. Well, what did Solomon do? He had so much gold. In fact, he had so much silver that he made it as common as stones in the day. That's crazy wealth. I was looking up the value of King Solomon's temple that he built in today. It would be like $4 trillion. Pocket change. He's like, yeah, we'll build a temple. Wow. It's crazy to think about that. So he amassed wealth. And then God told that when your kings come into rule, don't go getting horses from Egypt. And guess what Solomon did? He did that. And when your kings come to rule, don't amass a lot of wives. It's just going to be problems for you. And Solomon, we read, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Here's my point. Even the smartest people in the world make the dumbest decisions. Because that's the nature of sin. Sometimes we think, I can work my way out of this with all my smarts. And the reality is no, you're still a sinner. And that sin is going to mess you up. It ruins things in life, and that's why we need the cross of Christ, and that's why we need to be saved. The breakdown of the book is quite simple. Chapter 1 is this introduction. Chapters 2 through 5 is this investigation in life and all the experiences. Chapters 6 through 11 is this admonitions for life, and then this conclusion in chapter 11 and 12. Let me give you a few key verses as we look at this. Chapter 1, verse 2, he says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It's like slapping a bumper sticker on your car that says, life stinks and then you die. And so he goes, man, just go give that guy a hug. Make him feel a little better. I mean, we all have bad days, but good grief. Ecclesiastes 1:18, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. The more I know, the worse it gets. Sheesh. Ecclesiastes 2:11. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands have done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. You ever felt like that? Man, I work so hard, I sweat it out, I grind all day, and nothing ever lasts. I get home, I'm tired, and everything breaks at home. That was my weekend. Sorry. Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? The one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And a lot of times used in weddings, encourage couples, that marriage bond. Put the Lord as that third strand, and that's a good thing. Those are wise words. Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11. When the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. How true is that? Good grief. You just look at the news, and you're like, man, how did that guy get away with that? If I was doing that, man, I'd be sitting in jail. Nope. There's favors and there's ploys and there's bribes and all that stuff behind the scene. And sometimes it empowers people to be emboldened to do sin, knowing they're not going to have to pay a penalty or get caught in it. Ecclesiastes 12, verse 6 and 7. Remember him before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring and the wheel broken at the well, and the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. And this is what a great exhortation. Young people, listen, to look to the Lord before things fall apart, before you lose your marbles, before your strength fails and you go to pick something up and it crashes to the floor, before life starts falling apart. I mean, those of you that are older, hindsight's 20/20. And you tell those young people, hey man, you need to be careful, or you need to wise up. You know you're getting old when your teeth sleep somewhere else besides where you sleep. I mean, really? Those things happen. Or you bend down and you tie your shoes and you're thinking, what else can I do when I'm down here? What else needs to be done? You know, some of you are at that. You get on the floor and you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to take a nap down here. Wake me up when I'm done and we'll go from there. Hey, I'm only 49, but I'm feeling it too. You're like, oh, you're too young. Well, I'm older than you think inside. I feel it. So let's dive into this. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Word to the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And all is emptiness. That's what that word means, emptiness. And so as he looks through life, he's watching life through the eyes of an unsaved man. As he's observing all these things, and this is his statement, all of life is just truly empty. It's vain. And so he shows us how it appears that way in 3 different arenas. The first is the cycle in creation. He says, what profit, verse 3, has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, and the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes towards the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. And so he's looking at the cycles in creation, just observation, generation after generation, people come and go on the earth. We're born, we grow up, we work, and we die. That's kind of like his statement here. And the cycle continues with every generation. Does the earth ever stop and go, oh my goodness, wow, so-and-so died? Only one person, really, and remember, that was Jesus. When Jesus died on the cross, creation responded. It was dark for 3.5 hours. The earth shook as if responding to their creator dying. But for most of us, for all the rest of us, really, the earth is unfazed by man's demise and course, and it continues as it always has. Sunrise to sunset in verse 5, over and over again. The winds blow on their circuits, verse 6, as they just go about as God ordained, cooling down the earth, making the storms, watering the earth. And the waters of the rivers run into the seas and then back again. So he's just pointing as the same cycles are over and over in nature. There's action, but nothing is really ever truly changing. And oftentimes we have looked at creation. We've looked out at creation and went, wow, look at the design, look at the complexity, look at everything going on, and what does that mean for me? And people have looked up to the stars and go, is there a God out there? What's the purpose in all this? And let me tell you this, Psalms 19, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. God has called you and I into something that's far greater than just existence. He's called you into a relationship with him, to look at creation and go, wow, look at the design and patterns and seasons and everything that speaks of a designer. And that's the one I want to get to know. So the continual cycle in creation is clear. The second cycle in verse 8 would be a cycle of temptation. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. So we never stop seeing or hearing. Not only as we observe creation, we grow in our study of it and our knowledge of it and how the universe is operating, but it applies even as we face temptations in life. You know, you're never going to get to a place where you say, okay, I've reached my limit. I am no longer tempted. You'll never get to that place. You never stop being tempted with the lust of the eyes. You go into that wretched store called Costco. I don't like to go there because it's downfall. No, I'm only going to get one thing. Ooh, I need this. And you walk out of there. Sorry, Craig. I know you work there. But you walk out of there and you'll go, what happened to me? You gave in. And then you go back the next week. Wise up. Or you buy that car, brand new car. And what do we all say when we buy that car? Oh man, I'm keeping this car till the wheels fall off. Duct tape, it's going the extra mile. 2 years later, you traded it in for something else. This is it. Yeah, give it 2 years, you'll be doing the same thing. You know, you're never getting to a place where you're never going to be tempted. We look at those things. You never stop being tempted with the lust of the flesh. You know, whether it's the sexual desires or the food, even the food desires. I mean, Thanksgiving's coming, and you guys will sit around the table and you will gorge yourself and say, I am stuffed. I'm never going to eat again. When are we having pie? That's the nature of us. Give it a few hours. You take a group photo, and you're not looking for everybody else in that group photo. Who are you looking for? Yourself. Anything hanging out of my nose, anything, where's my hair? Did I was smiling right? I mean, Carly Simon had it right. You're so vain. You're vain, I'm vain. We're all that way. We have this incredible problem of thinking about ourselves a lot. And when we're not thinking about ourselves, we're thinking that other people are thinking about me. It's crazy what sin has done to us. It's messed us up. And so the unsaved man even sees this cycle in himself, and he often gets depressed because he can't do anything about it. Why do these cycles continue in my life? The helplessness leads to the hopelessness, which eventually leads to this emptiness in life. Is this all I'm made for? Only Jesus can bring meaning and purpose. The third cycle he looks at in verse 9 through 11, he says, is the cycle of generations. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be of any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. There's nothing new under the sun, he says. We think things are truly different for us, right? Oh, this is really new. We've advanced as society, and that's true to some regards, obviously. You think of technology and things like that, but at the root, it's still the same things, almost with just a new cover. If you go in your closet, you may look at some old clothes and go, they're going to come back in style, right? You know what's going on in style now with these 70s things are all back. The 80s retro stuff is all back. I'm waiting for somebody to walk around with suspenders hanging down because that's what I remember. You know what's back? The mullet. The mullet. My older brother was known as Micah the Mullet because he had this long flowing mullet. It was cool, but the mullet's back. And you think, Lord, help us. I mean, if you live longer than 20 years, you're going to find that things just cycle around. Maybe a little slightly new flavor, but they cycle around. But what's cool is the Bible shows us from the very beginning, men have struggled with pride and lust and bitterness and envy and jealousy. All the things that we see in the hearts of men thousands of years ago, we find in our own heart today. We're still the same people. And yet the Bible tells us and gives us examples of men and women who overcame those things through that relationship with Jesus Christ and through the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's a great inspiration for all of us. He says there's no remembrance of the former things there in verse 11. Let me ask you something. Do you know who won Super Bowl 21? Anybody? I had to look it up myself. The New York Giants did. Do you know who won an Oscar in 1972 for Best Actress? No, Jane Fonda did. I had to look that one up too. I don't keep track of that stuff. Do you remember what you got for Christmas last year? No. I mean, God made us with like this short-term memory. We forget all kinds of things. And yet the world says, strive for the limelight. Get to that place and make a name for yourself. People will remember. And guess what? They don't remember you once you hit there and you fall off. And 2 weeks later, who are you? There's no remembrance of the former things. Remembering the past, I believe, is a good thing so we can learn. And you know what's scary is today there are groups that want to tear down the monuments of the past, even mistakes, to tear them down, even in our country's history, rather than learn from them so we don't repeat it again. It's really part of this devious plan to erase these foundational principles of our country and how we were established and try to create a brand new way of doing things as if we're more enlightened. But if we learn from our past, we won't repeat the same mistakes. There's what's called the generation blame game. It goes like this. Every generation looks back to the good old days, lives in trying times, and says the days ahead are bleak. You blame all the problems that you face presently on your forefathers, and you see no hope for the next generation after them with the future problems. You take any generation and they'll do the same thing. Our mess that we're in is because of the past generation. What a bunch of thugs. And boy, I feel sorry for the next generation. But the Bible tells us to stop pointing the finger at others and look at your own heart and say, Lord, if there's ever going to be change, it starts in my heart with me. Change me from the inside out. Lord, I make a mess of things. I am one to blame because I'm part of the sin cycle. And Lord, I need you to come in and change me by the power of your cross. So having looked at these cycles, the preacher here, the teacher, goes into all the things that he's tried in life, which takes us from chapter 1, verse 12, all the way through chapter 2. Let me just give you two of them before we close out. The first one that he looks at is education in verses 12 through 15, and then philosophy, verses 16 through 18. Look at verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven, this burdensome task God has given to the sons of man by which they may be exercised. And I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. And indeed, all is vanity and grasping for the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. So the first thing he looks at is education. It's good to set your heart to learn new things and search out the truth. Getting a good education, exercising the mind intellectually, understanding how things work, it's not a bad thing. And we grow through that discovery process. But what he's getting at is that men have done that for generations, and he calls it here as if it's a burdensome task in verse 13 that God has given to us to keep learning. But the pursuit of higher education and higher knowledge isn't going to bring meaning and purpose in life. President Theodore Roosevelt said a muttonhead after an education at West Point or Harvard is still a muttonhead still. And maybe you've seen that. Education doesn't do that. He says in verse 14, I have seen all the works that are done. It's vanity. It's grasping for the wind. You're going to see that used 9 times in this book. It's a worthless attempt. Why try? I'm trying to grab the wind and control it. I can't do that. And how many of us could say, I've kind of seen that to be true in my life. My master's degree in underwater basket weaving with a minor in Star Wars culture is just not really paying off this day and age. That's what happens. You know what? I got this student debt, and I thought this was the route I want to go and pursued it, and now I'm coming to this reality that I don't really want to do that anymore. And so we go back to school to try to reinvent, and it's not a bad thing, but as long as we're looking at it to go, I'm not trying to find meaning and purpose in life through education. Because listen, God didn't define your life by what you do. He defines your life by who you are in Him, that relationship. Your education is just a season to get a tool or something that you may use that work as an avenue of worshiping the Lord and glorifying Him with that. But don't live for education. We live for the Lord. The world looks at life and says, we just need more education. And God says, no, you don't need more education. You need salvation. You're not going to learn your way out of this. You need to be saved. And that's why He sent His Son, Jesus. So I exhort you, don't chase after the temporal, looking for it to fulfill the eternal void that is in your heart. Only God can do that. And so he says in verse 15, what's crooked cannot be made straight, and what's lacking cannot be numbered. He's kind of coming to the end of himself in this laboratory of life going, man, ugh. It's kind of the ugh moment. I ultimately can't change things. No matter how educated or gifted I am or wise I am or whatever, they shift for a season and they go back to the way they were. Ugh. And the crooked man and all his sinfulness, he can't change himself. Ugh. The cross of Christ has to come in and do all that. It's the only way we're going to be changed. And what I love about the heart of the Lord is when Jesus comes on the scene. Even in Luke 3:5, it says when He came that the crooked places would be made straight. You see that? We can't change ourselves, but Jesus comes on the scene and says, hey, I'll take your crookedness and I will make you better, whole, healthy in the Lord. Verse 16, he changes from education to philosophy when he says, I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness and I have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is grasping for the wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So he shifts to philosophy to understand man's madness, his follies, his makeup and everything. And many people have tried to do the same thing. Hey, what really makes a man tick? What's the purpose of life? There was a guy by the name of Hugh Moorhead who began a hobby of writing to philosophers and scientists and authors, asking them a question, what is the purpose of life? And here's some of the responses he got. From Isaac Asimov, a sci-fi writer and biochemist. He wrote back and he said, as far as I can see, there is no purpose to life. Carl Jung, that Australian psychiatrist, wrote, I don't know what the meaning of the purpose of life is, but it looks like as if there was something meant by it. Smarty pants. Albert Ellis, the psychiatrist who invented rational emotive therapy, said, as far as I can tell, life has no special or intrinsic meaning or purpose. And Thomas Nagel, the American philosopher, said, I'm afraid the meaning of life still eludes me. These are some smart cookies, or maybe not. But the point is, chasing philosophy, chasing psychology to try to understand the purpose and meaning of life is an empty venture. It doesn't elevate me. You're going to find it actually depresses you, which is exactly what Solomon said in verse 18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. It's like the more I know, the more painful it is. Sin has wrecked us. It ruins us. It wreaks havoc and destruction. I mean, we are messed up. And you just want to say, buck up, little camper. Solomon, look up. The Lord has made you and I for something far greater than those things. And the purpose in life comes through Jesus Christ. Let me just close with this. It's good for us to look back and evaluate things. It's good for us to look back and learn from life lessons. It's even good for us to look back and kind of go, yeah, you know what? Life truly is vain. It's empty. It's fallen apart. Everything falls apart. But don't get stuck there. That is the motivation for you to come into this discovery. The God who made you for something more than existence. He made you to have a relationship with him. And in that relationship, you find the meaning of life, the purpose of life, the joys and the wonder of life itself, and all that God has intended, to where you're not in this place of doom and gloom. Because this is a reality check. Life is hard. Things do fall apart. But it's the believer who says, because of Jesus, I got heaven coming. And I know that today, no matter what I'm facing, my purpose is to glorify the God who made me. And I can be content in that. I can be satisfied with that. I can find peace and rest and hope and joy, because even in light of what I'm facing today, I know because of my God and what he has done, there's something for me tomorrow that this world can't touch. You see, the church is the only place in life where you're going to find the message that says the God who made you loves you, died for the problems that you have and the mess that you're in, to give you life today and eternal life tomorrow. The church is a preacher of hope. God's light in this world. You go out in the world and what are you going to hear? Oh man, just be a better you. I can't. It's messed up already. Oh man, you just need a new person. You need a new situation. You need this and that. Just believe in yourself. Man, I've tried all that stuff. It's empty. But when you walk through the doors of a church, you find the gospel that says, yes, you are a wreck. But the God who made you loves you and has made hope. So let's pray.